just.
Did you just fling your hair back as you said that?
What'd you say?
What did you say?
Oh, thanks.
Oh my gosh.
Can I start off class today?
What do you mean, can you start off?
I
With?
put my water. I put my water away because I've been having to pee a lot.
Do you know what we gotta do?
You gotta do the documents.
What do you have to pee when you're on the table?
It's on the floor.
Oh.
You just go.
Well,
Bring
first
the
we have to
plastic
write.
with you and squeeze it.
nice-
No.
Who's on the list today? We haven't done this in a while.
Who's on the list? You're in charge of squeezing my one bag.
Is Maddie Buflin?
For the inspirational notes.
Yes.
Feel good letters.
Wave Maddie, so everyone knows who you are. That is Maddie Buflin. She needs our love and support.
Okay. Is it M-A-D-D-Y?
So write Maddie Buflin.
Or just call me Madison, you know what I mean?
If you know Maddie, awesome. Share a fond memory. If
Hi,
you
Maddie.
don't, that's okay.
Fond memory? Oh, I got lots of those.
Wish your luck.
What are fun?
Oh, I'm gonna write a note and I'm gonna not put my name on it and you're gonna know who it's from.
I'm sure I will. Am I going to myself?
Unless you want.
No, that's good.
Okay.
You know what? I'll tell myself ahead.
Load your essay. Good work. Who helped you?
It's not B-E-A, you fling.
Decided that.
I skipped her last name because I didn't feel like it.
B-E-U-C-H-L-I-N-G.
That's what you care. Now I know.
I was thinking of spelling beautiful and I just kept off.
He's talking to his calendar right now.
He's not like- I'm not looking at how I was
No, I have to look at you
Here.
for inspiration.
Oh, okay.
Write it down to Maddie Buflin.
Here we go.
Nothing neat. Thank you. I was gonna sign my name in cursive. I changed my mind. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of notes here.
Drop me a fold now. So just open it like a card.
Yeah, I do. I'll make mine fancy. I love these things. I haven't done it yet.
You're probably a long ways away if we're doing
Yeah, I
it down the
know.
list.
You right?
Oh, it was almost there.
Was it?
Wasn't bad.
I feel like
What was it? Connor?
Thank you.
Oh, that's cute. It's like a little hat.
Yeah, I don't actually know how to make a hat though.
Ooh, that's good handwriting.
She's reading all of them.
Oh, it's so
Are you reading
cute.
it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to get through this
I'll
class
probably read
somehow.
them like 10
No, I'm
times
just
today.
kidding.
It's uplifting. Yeah, I'll literally probably read them 100 times.
is on the key. I was a little bit confused.
Enjoy an original poem by Eve Goldstein.
Oh, a poem. What kind of poem? Oh my god.
How did you come up with a poem in like 2 seconds?
Violets are blue, roses are red. I want to punch you in the head.
Oh, there you go.
I sure
Right
hope.
off the top of my head.
That was more than 2 seconds ago. No! Madeline.
You're the only one that actually wrote that.
You didn't start Max, did you?
Well, I called you Madison.
I know,
It's
I was
hard.
funny 'cause
You
it's
told me that.
I do, I like it. Thank you.
I called Maddie, and Madison, Madison. I don't know how that's gonna be a change in my life. Like, I already marked you guys as that. I'm trying to change it.
I'm trying to change it to Maddie and Madeline, but it's not working.
It's not gonna work.
We move yours.
It's cute. It is not. It's you. It's happy.
You wasn't. Didn't you write the letter U?
No.
Okay, so you may or may not have heard from your other CIS class. Yes, you are getting more stuff today. Relax. Just relax.
Is there another mini paper due Monday?
Can I try
now?
Stuff.
How many paper dues next Friday?
Oh, I'm curious.
Then.
I love it.
Just
Then it's
relax.
lost.
All right, so let's talk about continued westward expansion. You may or may not have been confused about what's going on here, but this thing called
Did you read it, Madison?
Texas is part of the US now. And there's a dispute between two rivers. So I'm just gonna call this river the Nueces. That's the Nueces River. And then there's another river, and that's called the Rio Grande or Rio Grande. Mexico claimed that this was the southern border of Texas. And the US said, no, this is the southern border of Texas. Okay, now,
That's
you're
when I got wrong.
President Polk. Where would you put American soldiers to protect the United States? Think about what Trump is doing right now along the southern border of Texas. He has put something like 10,000 American soldiers. Where are they? Are they protecting Texas by being stationed in Missouri? Does that make sense? Do you remember when the British created the Proclamation Line of 1763? And what they were supposed to do is get out there in the Appalachians to enforce it. And they chose to enforce it from Boston, which means they weren't enforcing it at all. Where would you, if you were President Polk, where would you put American soldiers to protect the United States? Where? On the Rio Grande?
In front of it.
What do you mean in front of it?
Like.
Move your marker down.
You'd invade Mexico?
No.
You'd go up here?
No, because they're gonna send their soldiers there, so then you can push them back.
But what did you claim was the southern border of Texas?
But they claim that one is, so they're gonna try.
Yeah, I know, but what would you do if you claimed this was?
Slightly north of the.
I cannot believe this question is that
Would you
difficult.
be on the river?
Okay, say it again.
Where would you put soldiers to protect the United States?
On US property, right next to the Rio.
Okay,
But instead, they
here.
But instead, you guys could have
Yes.
stayed over and
Doesn't that seem logical? That you would put your soldiers on the border on the American side. And that's exactly what happened. Under the command of a guy by the name of Taylor. Taylor was the American commander. The United States military stationed themselves on the north side of the Rio Grande. Now put yourself into the head of the ruler of Mexico. His name was Santa Anna.
He thinks they just invaded.
That's correct. Mexico claims this was the southern border. So when American soldiers crossed the Nueces, in Mexico's eyes, what just happened?
or more.
They just invaded. So Santa Anna ordered his larger Mexican army. It's hard to imagine today, but at the time, this was actually seen as a fair fight between the US military and the Mexican military. That was seen as, I wonder who will win. Okay, so they crossed. Mexican soldiers crossed the Rio Grande, and we have to be careful about language here. Did they attack the Americans? Or were they defending themselves from the Americans, right? Think about self-defense. You have the legal right in the United States to use lethal force if you are being attacked. When you use lethal force in self-defense, are you attacking the aggressor? Or are you simply defending yourself from the aggressor? We have to be careful about language. When the Mexican soldiers crossed the Rio Grande, Put yourself back into President Polk's eyes. They crossed the Rio Grande. What just happened? They just invaded us. So now the Americans use lethal force against the Mexicans. This is not unique, by the way. Both sides claim self-defense. Both sides claim self-defense in waging this war. It's nothing new. When we get to World War II, you will learn. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Hitler claimed self-defense when he invaded his neighbors. It's a stretch, but what Hitler claimed was that those people in the neighboring countries, yes, they were in this thing called Poland, but those people were German. There was a group of ethnic Germans in Poland, and they needed protection. Today, in this chunk of land right there, that's the Ukraine. That little hiccup right there, that little peninsula, is ethnically Russian. Those people are Russian ethnically. And that's why Russia justified its invasion of that chunk of land. They said, those people are Russian. They need protection. So this is nothing new. Regardless, you are looking at what started the Mexican-American War. A dispute over what was the southern border of Texas. Now, we're not going to fight this war extensively, but we will fight it a little bit. There were 3 theaters. This is this red line right there, right? So you can see that, you see that blue line? That's the Nueces River. South of it is the Rio Grande. The red line represents the American military. They crossed the Nueces, and then after being attacked, they crossed the Rio Grande and did invade Mexico. That's one theater. A second theater is this red line right here. The invasion and capture of the capital of Mexico. The United States military captured Mexico City. This was under the command of a guy by the name of Winfield Scott. What's interesting is the path he chose. He landed here at something called Veracruz and marched straight westward and captured Mexico City. Just like a conquistador did a few hundred years before. Does anyone remember? Who was that conquistador who landed there and then marched west and captured the Aztec? Very good, Cortez. The American military followed the same path. Okay? And you could make all sorts of interesting comparisons. Were the Americans the modern day Spanish? And the Mexicans were the Aztec or whatever. Okay. The third is this theater right here. And you got to remember this dotted line, that's the border of Mexico. This is all Mexico. So when the Americans, that's Mexico. This thing over here, today we call it California, that's Mexico. This is all Mexico. And it's kind of a funny story because there's this thing called Fremont. That's a guy. Fremont was an American who made it all the way to California, defeated the Mexican resistance there, and then declared California an independent state, an independent country, and named himself ruler. Okay? That's why the second thing called Kearny is entering the picture. He was ordered by the U.S. military, go and thank Fremont for his services and then relieve him of his responsibility. And that could have turned ugly. Could have, right? It could have turned into maybe Fremont liked being the ruler of this thing called California. Thankfully, it didn't. But this is not the first time when something like that sort of weird thing happened. Remember Aaron Burr, who shot Hamilton and then fled and then developed a plan to become the new ruler of New France, which is basically the middle of the United States, right? So this is not the first time we've seen that. But this is important because this will be the reward for the victorious Americans. All of this will be the reward. Any questions on the war itself? I mean, we skipped over gobs and gobs of history here, but that's okay.
Wait, what did Kearny do?
Kearny relieved Fremont of his role. Like, thanks for capturing California. I'm in charge now. And Fremont could have resisted. Now, during the Mexican-American War, and stop me when this sounds familiar, we have a war fought over land, and a party from the north voices opposition. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Why does it sound familiar? What war did we study in this class where an opposition political party from the north opposed it, saying, look, this war is really about American attempts to capture land? What war was that? Very good. The War of 1812. You only had a few options, right? It was either the Revolution.
I don't remember the year.
Well, it's not only the year, but it's the name of the war,
Yeah.
right? The War of 1812. It's like, God, what is that? The War of 1815? No, there's no war. Okay, yeah, it's the War of 1812. Right? The Federalists argued that it was simply a land grab attempt by the U.S. to capture Canada and voiced opposition. Same thing here. The political party in opposition were the Whigs. The Whigs, which were the liberals at the time, they were the liberals. The Democrats were the conservatives at the time, argued, this is not the reason why we're fighting the war. This was an excuse. It was an excuse. Why are we fighting the war? Because we're greedy and we want land. Just be honest about it. And one particular Whig, who would later become president. In fact, he's the tallest president we've ever had. Who? Nope. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. This is young Abraham Lincoln.
How tall is Abraham Lincoln?
6'4". Who, at the time, I mean, it's tall today.
No, that's tiny.
What? No.
But then.
Do you see the irony in what you said?
Why do you wear a top hat then?
To look
Back then, they thought he might have a gigantosaurus disease. Like, no one was that big back then. That was enormous. That's like Shaq. Anyway, he opposed this war. The irony of it, 20 years later, Southern states would accuse him of the very same thing when he launched the Union Army to invade the South. The treaty that the U.S. signed with Mexico after the war was over, by the way, the U.S. won, was this treaty. It's called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo.
Was that the
Can you please repeat that?
The location. Guadalupe Hidalgo. In this treaty, the United States agreed to take this land, and in exchange, Mexico agreed to give it.
Love those treaties.
You've heard treaties like this before, haven't you? Fairly lopsided treaties. The Treaty of Greenville, as an example, between the United States and some Native American tribes in the Ohio Valley. The treaty between the United States and Spain, where the United States agreed to basically take control of large chunks of what we call Florida, and in exchange, the Spanish agreed to give it up. Right? Not a fair treaty. And don't be too critical of that. Should we have had a fair treaty after World War II? In a war, the U.S. thinks it's right. The Germans are wrong. Same thing here. Sorry, Mexico, we won. You lost. It's not an actual cash payment to buy it. Now, while this war is going on, there's something important also happening, and that is the trains are coming. The Transcontinental Railroad, considered to be one of the great achievements ever, linking the nation, right? Remember, the Federalist Plan was to build roads and canals and railroads. So here come the trains. Now there's a geographic feature that exists here that's sort of not good for trains. Anyone know? Mountains, the Rocky Mountains, the Rockies, right? And if you've been out west, they're beautiful, but they're not good for trains. You got to either blast through them. And if you've ever been out west, some of those tunnels are really long. And you think like, good God, how'd they make this thing?
Dynamite.
Dynamite, that's right. Also known as dynamite. All right, very good. But that geographic feature ceases to exist right about here. There's an area of flat land right there. So after the United States won this chunk of land, a guy by the name of Gadsden realized, like, gee, it'd be kind of nice if we had just a little bit more land. a little bit further to the south so that we could build the railroad there. And the United States negotiated a separate land purchase called the Gadsden Purchase. It was basically a little bit of land right here, and it exists today. It is part of the United States as well. Two more things to note here before we advance slides. During the Mexican-American War, a guy by the name of David Wilmot, who was a congressman, proposed a bill. The bill said no slavery would be allowed in any land won from Mexico. No slavery. So you can see that even during the Mexican-American War, slavery is an issue.
No slavery in what?
In any land won from Mexico. No slavery in any of this land. And it lost. It did not become law. And this frustrated Northerners. So even once again, we have the issue of sectionalism and slavery. And another issue. Up until this acquisition of land, westward expansion was seen as, I don't know about easy is quite the right word, but basically the United States acquired land that was empty. There's no people living there. Indians don't count. With this, though, there's a lot of people here. The oldest settlement, the oldest non-native settlement in North America is not Jamestown. It's Santa Fe, settled by the Spanish, much older than Jamestown. There were a lot of people that lived in this area. And now it's the property of the United States. Are those American citizens? Do you instantly become American citizen? Before this, the concept of American went something like this. You're an American if you're white. That's part of the definition. Now, that wasn't on paper definition, but basically that's the idea. If you're white, if you're a European descendant, if you speak English, no Catholics, that's not American. These people are Spanish, of Spanish origin, Mexican origin. They speak Spanish and they're Catholic. Are they American citizens? Now, we'll hold off on answering that question, but that's a question that the United States government had to deal with for the first time. Right? Land acquisition, suddenly we've got all these people. Do they get to, I mean, they might have a nice little bit of property. Do they get to keep it? It's their property. Do they get to keep that property? Or are we going to push them out for the good white people to come along and take it? The United States has to deal with this issue later. Any questions? Let's keep rocking. That is Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor, this guy. He would ride victory in the Mexican-American War to the presidency. Continuing this trend that we've seen again and again. War heroes become president. Our first president, war hero. Today is the funeral of the last president that we've had that served in the military. George H.W. Bush, president number 41. No president since him. Is that a correct sentence? No president since President H.W. Bush has had real experience in the military. His son, Bush Jr., was in the Texas National Guard. Well, that's something, but that's not exactly fighting in the jungles of Vietnam. Clinton deserted to avoid service in Vietnam. And you know, Obama's too young. He wasn't old enough to serve in Vietnam. We haven't had, and Trump was old enough, but, and I don't mean that as criticism or praise, but manipulated the system so that he could avoid military service. So it hasn't been true for a while, but early on, it was almost like a requirement. You want to be president? Did you serve in the military? If not, I don't like your chances. Okay? So there he is, Zachary Taylor. He's a war hero. That second bullet is the answer to the question posed to him. Hey, what do you think about slavery in the Mexican Cession? Mexican cession is the land we won for Mexico. Let's go back. This is the Mexican cession. You will hear me talking about it a lot. That is the Mexican cession. Hey, Zach, what do you think about allowing slavery in the territories that we won for Mexico? And his answer, Pop Sav in Mexes.
Pro-slavery in
Pro-slavery? Not quite.
what's pop?
Right.
Population.
What is Pop Sav?
Population sovereignty.
Popular sovereignty, which is what? What is popular sovereignty?
What everyone else thinks.
Right. What do I think? What do you think? Right? What do you think about allowing slavery? I'll let you decide.
Is that
So when you apply for statehood, right? Let's go back. All right, so let's carve out a chunk here, right there, and call it Colorado. When Colorado applies for statehood, Colorado can have a vote. Slavery or not? Is that pro-slavery? Not really. Is that anti-slavery? Not really. It's neutral. And it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? It sounds like a pro-democracy position. I'll support whatever you guys say. It's kind of it sounds good. Later on, 12 years later, the 1860 election, when Lincoln was running for president, that's what his opponent said. His opponent's position on slavery was popular sovereignty. I'll let you decide. Whereas Lincoln was anti-slavery.
and he won.
And Lincoln did win. You're right. Okay. That sort of shows you how times change, because Taylor's position was popular sovereignty and he won. And his opponent, the name is unimportant. The party is what matters. The opponent of the person who ended up winning, Zachary Taylor, was from the Free Soil Party. A new party. It's one of those parties that's sort of a blip on the radar, goes away fairly quickly. But they are important. We've already had this discussion, but humor me here. What's wrong with slavery? What's wrong with it?
No choice.
Moral. It's immoral to treat.
All three of you did something perfectly. I couldn't have caught a bigger fish. You all made moral arguments. It's wrong because you don't have any choice. It's wrong because you own someone, right? It's a moral argument. Owning another human being is wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that argument. It's a moral argument, though. These people, the Free Soilers, were also against slavery, but they didn't make those arguments. They didn't believe black people were equal to white people. Lincoln didn't think black people were equal to white people. But Lincoln thought slavery was stupid. The Free Soilers argued slavery was stupid. It's a stupid system. It's dumb. So why were they opposed to slavery? They opposed it for economic reasons. It's a stupid system. What makes an economic system productive is motivation. How many of you plan on going to college? Every single one of you. That's why you're in this class, right? I mean, if you're not planning on going to college, why are you here?
We like it.
To learn.
Yeah.
Okay. To learn. It's so interesting. Okay. But you're getting 6 college credits, man. And you're done with history unless you want to pursue that. That's great. But if you don't want to pursue history, you don't need to take it in college. This is your history class in college. You're done. Okay?
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
We just need math and English and
Math. Okay. Why do you want to go to college?
To get a higher education.
But why though?
to get money.
To
That's what we're
learn.
told to.
Money. You want that job, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
You have to spend money to get money.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I'm trying to make a point here. The motivation that you have in acting the way you do is financial. Now, that's not true of all of you, and some of you want to be a social worker. No one becomes a social worker because you're going to be swimming in it, right? I did not become a teacher because, man, I don't smoke $100 bills every night. Like, oh, money.
There's people that do
But
that.
money's part of it, but it's not the driving factor. Slavery prevents slaves from pursuing their individual desires, right? Let's just pretend she's a slave. And she's got a great idea. She's got a great idea for a new golf shoe. See, in the golf shoe, you can hide a golf ball in the heel of the shoe. So before you're round, take a Titleist 1, put it there. Take another Titleist, no one knows about that golf ball that's in your shoe. Take another Titleist 1, and you have a bad slice, right? So you're on tee number 1, you're with your friends, and straight out of bounds. And your friends are like, you have to play another ball. And you say, no, you know what? I think it hit a tree. I think it bounced back in. And they're looking at you like, that doesn't happen. And they're watching you to see if you sneak your hand into your golf bag to grab another ball. But you never do. In fact, you walk the whole time like this. And you're looking for your golf ball. And then at one point, you press a little button in your shoe and out pops the golf ball. And you're like, oh, I found it. Here it is. And they walk up to you like, well, is it a Titleist? It's a Titleist 1. Well, damn it. All right. Great idea. So she goes to a bank and she says, I've got a great idea. And we're going to produce this golf shoe and I'm going to hire people to make it. And if it happens, who benefits? Name 3 groups that benefit. Consumers. Very good. They benefit from the product. The bank is another one because you'll pay back the loan.
And the person who have
You, how about the people you hire to make it?
They get money.
They get paid. And let's keep going. Those workers that get paid, what do they do with that money? They spend it. You see? Her brilliant idea benefits
the economy.
everyone. Everyone.
The golfers that buy the shoe are gonna go to the golf place and pay to play golf.
Everyone. Everyone benefits. But it won't happen. It won't happen
If
if
they're
you
stuck
have
working in
slavery
the
because the bank will say, I'm sorry, you are a couch. And we don't loan money to couches. And so think about this, think it through. Who now does not benefit? Everybody. There's the argument of the free soilers. Not, but she's not being treated equally. Black people are no. I want her to operate in a capitalist system because I want a cool golf shoe. Is the argument being made by free soilers. It is an economic argument. It's none of this equality crap. I want her to be able to start a shoe factory so that I can cheat. That's the argument. They are opposed to slavery. He's saying, I'll let you decide. They're saying, no, not because it's a moral problem, it's an economic problem. And he wins. 12 years later, Lincoln, Stephen Douglas, and Lincoln wins. Something changed over the next 12 years, right? 1848 to 1860. Something happened. So we'll have to figure that out. Any questions, Zaya? One slide left.
49.
Let's go back to this. You'll see the Mexican cession. This chunk of land is today California, of course. It is now American territory. So here we go. One day in 1848, near the city of Sacramento, a guy by the name of John Sutter owned a mill. His mill was powered by a big wheel on the river. The river provided the power to turn the wheel to energize his mill. He cut wood. And there was a worker that was working at the mill, and he was in the river, and he found gold. He found gold. No, it was real gold. It was gold. Gold was the basis of money back then. We are no longer on the gold standard today, but it was the basis back then. Now, this is not an economics class, so we're not going to get into it heavily, but gold is valuable. Of course, it's still valuable today. But back then, it's very, very valuable. And word spread that there was gold in Demdare Hills. Within a year, within 1 year, there were enough people in California to make it a state. You need 50,000 people. Oh, okay. Way to save lives. Within 1 year, there were enough people. You need 60,000 people to apply for statehood. Within 1 year of California, of the discovery of gold, 1 year from 1848 is 1849. That's why they're called the 49ers. They flooded the state. Now, almost no one found gold. Almost no one found gold. Now, did people make a fortune? Some did. Looking for gold is hard on clothing. You're putting holes in clothing. It's getting dirty. It's getting muddy. So a German, moved to California, and he invented a better material to make clothing out of so it could handle the rigors of looking for gold. And I see 1, 2,
Jeans.
3, 4, 5, yep, 6. 6 of you are the direct product of that person.
Something Levi.
Levi Strauss.
Go!
Levi Strauss. He invented denim, a product that is stronger to handle the rigors of mining. And there were others that did make it, but not because they found gold. A few found gold, not many. The smart people were the ones that sold the materials to the people who were trying to find the gold. So I'll sell you clothing so you can find the gold. I'll sell you mining equipment so you can find the gold. I'm the one that made it. You're the idiot buying the equipment so you can find the gold. I'm the guy that's selling you the equipment. I'm the one who made it. You didn't. Okay? Fun little fictional, it's not fictional, fun little fact. So California becomes state in 1850. Which state was the one just before California? Wisconsin. Becomes a state in 1848.
There you go, Potter.
1848. California becomes a state in 1850. Name the next state. Minnesota. Exactly.
Oh, that means we're better than you guys. Because you like Minnesota. Oh, wow.
Got it. Okay. But just picture the United States. Here's a
I
map,
love Minnesota.
right? So look, this is what it looked like at the beginning of the Civil War. And if you've ever wondered, it's so weird because there's states and then there's territories and then there are states again.
Yeah.
But now you know why,
Whoa.
right? They skipped this part. And then, after California, then they went back to basically westward progression of areas becoming states. But California sort of cheated the system and the overflow into Oregon as well.
Did they do eastern expansion at all?
Well, there's an ocean there, so.
Or no, from California,
Oh,
Well, they were already there.
I see what you're saying. Sort of. The overflow into Oregon was sort of what you were saying.
That's north.
Thank you for pointing
You
that
know,
out. Last note here, California granted admission as a free state. And that will
That's good.
render its head later on.
How many people was it? 60,000 to become a
60,000 to become a state. Okay, I have gifts.
Potter.
You're welcome. Keep in mind, in this class, you have Kias that you're doing. You have a 3-paragraph mini paper, good faith attempt at that. That's due Friday. Now I'm giving you more.
Also the stamp thing due on Monday.
That's right, 3 pages read on stamp. Kenneth Stamp, a historian who also wrote something in this packet. He's a giant. He's a historian that is, he's one of the biggies. He's a Zen.
Oh, there's questions.
Don't worry about the questions.
Checkers started doing it. Wait, no, I didn't vote. I didn't vote. He fired us.
Yeah. The two
Okay.
tests and keys are due Friday. That's all you need to really worry about until Friday. And then Monday is the
It's a
same.
powder,
And
and
this
then
one's the blue book.
Thank you.
Okay, let me talk about this. Your next Blue Book essay is going to ask the question, was Reconstruction successful? Reconstruction was the time period right after the Civil War. Oh, I see some of you are writing on this and don't.
No, I'm writing.
Do not write anything on this.
Was reconstruction.
Write our
This
name?
is nope, blemish free.
Nothing. Not even our name.
Let me explain.
Sorry, Potter.
Do not write on this at all. Okay, this is unmarked by you. Okay, you will be addressing Reconstruction. Reconstruction was the time period right after the Civil War, when the United States had to rebuild the South. The South was devastated by the Civil War. We got to rebuild it. But rebuild means more than you think. Yes, we're talking about the physical rebuilding. Okay, you rebuild the railroads, you rebuild the schools, get it. But what about rebuilding their economy? Their entire economy was based on slavery. Slavery's gone. Now what? Now you have a whole group of people who are suddenly needing jobs, former slaves, and you have a whole other group of people who need workers. You gotta fix that. That's the economic rebuilding. How about the political system? You had a whole group of people that were not allowed to vote because they were slaves, and you had a whole other group of people that got to vote. And right after the Civil War, those things are reversed. Former Confederates banned from voting. What about these former slaves? Do they get to vote? You got to fix that. That's the political rebuilding. So the physical rebuilding, the economic rebuilding, and the political rebuilding. The first set of documents here all argue it failed. It did not do what it was supposed to do, and it took Martin Luther King 100 years later, plus others, to do what Reconstruction should have done. And that's documents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Documents 1 through 8 all argue Reconstruction failed. Your job for tomorrow is to look at the one document I assigned and analyze it. Explain what the argument is. Nobody will be assigned document 5, and no one will be assigned document 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7.
And just the
One
page
document.
order, like.
Reading one document. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7.
They're not by page order. You have to read where it says.
It's just the document.
When it says that.
Document 1. Read this.
Oh, that's good.
This is 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2. Read your document and come up with answers to which area of need are they trying to fix? Is it the economic? Is it the political? Is it the physical? What is trying to be fixed? Okay? And then what's the argument being made? Why did it fail? Why did it fail? They all argue it failed.
What is trying to be fixed?
What is trying to be fixed and why did it fail? Okay. Now, addressing the how come we can't mark this up. This piece of paper that I'm about to hand to you represents the only piece of paper you can write on. You do not get to write on these documents. You do not get to write on the primary document you have to find. You do not get to write on the secondary document you have to find. Everything is written on here. So you could write, hey, on document 1, this is the argument being made. You can explain everything to yourself on this piece of paper, front and back.
And we get that for our paper, our blue book essay.
Yes, everything you want. This is the official CIS cheat sheet.
Could I write all my notes on that?
I don't care what you write on it. You can put a bunch of tic-tac-toe games on it.
Ooh, do that.
I said.
You can use this for the objective test too, right?
I know.
That is correct. So this piece of paper
Also, if I get out.
is your cheat sheet for the entire test.
Exam.
Objective 2.
I have a question.
Ah.
So what if we don't want to write, wait, he's on essay 2.
Yes.
So what if we just want to write our essay on
You can do whatever you want. This piece of paper And this piece of paper is not printed on by feeding it into your printer. Hey,
You
you,
can tell.
cheat sheet. You get to mark this up.
Oh,
You
boys.
use this during the objective and during the essay. Okay?
Is that all the important stuff you have to say?
Yes.
Just go
Let's
buy.
Go, dude.
Hey, you do have 10 minutes to read your
What
document.
kind of paper is it? Oh, you can't tell us. Why did I even ask?
It's a reconstruction.
What do you mean, what kind of paper?
Same kind of paper. This?
As what?
As regular printer paper? Never mind, Potter. Okay, I'm not
He's
making.
trying to cheat your system to print out something, like to.
I thought you just said like this isn't regular paper or something. You print out.
He doesn't understand.
Potter, just
Do
go back
you?
to that.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot. Okay, never
Explain what he means.
He's trying to make it so he can make a different sheet.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just asking like what's the.
Well, yeah, but you
As
can't
a-
print on those.
Oh, that's what you said. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
I thought you meant like this is like a different kind of paper, so I know if you're cheating.
Yeah, that's.
Well, you
what
could have
it
made
is.
a different color.